Do you know that feeling when your mind never shuts off, that even when everything is silent around you, inside there's a constant whirlwind of thoughts that won't stop? Well, that's exactly what we're going to talk about today. Why overthinking is exhausting you, and what surprising answer Jesus gave to this struggle that so many of us face in silence. Because it's not just physical exhaustion, it's that mental burnout that no one sees, that restlessness of the soul that accompanies you even in moments that should be for rest. And what if I told you that Jesus not only understood this struggle, but also left a path that completely contradicts our logic? Stay with me until the end, because what you're about to discover could completely change the way you deal with your own mind. And believe me, it's not what you're expecting. It's 3 a.m. The house is silent. Everyone is asleep, but you're there lying down, eyes fixed on the ceiling, while your mind won't stop. It replays conversations you had days ago. You imagine scenarios that may never happen. You relive past mistakes as if you could rewrite them now. And the more you try to stop, the faster your thoughts race. This silence should bring rest, but instead it brings exhaustion. Because overthinking isn't reflection. It's an invisible prison that steals your peace without making a sound. It's that inner voice that never tires, that never gives respite, that transforms even the early hours of the morning into battlefields. And the worst part? Nobody sees it. Nobody knows. On the outside, everything seems normal. The truth is, a tired mind doesn't ask permission to appear. It simply settles in and begins to control how you see the world, the decisions you make, even how you relate to God. Because when the mind doesn't rest, neither can the soul. And maybe you're thinking, but is this just happening to me? Am I exaggerating? No, you're not. This struggle is more common than you think, and there's a reason why it drains you so much. Because when silence should be restful, but instead becomes torment, something needs to change. There was a man who lived in a small village, known to everyone as someone dedicated, hard-working, and responsible. He woke up early, took care of his family, and fulfilled his commitments. In everyone's eyes, he was an example of balance, but no one knew what was going on inside him. Every night, after everyone was asleep, he would sit outside the house, motionless, his gaze lost in thought. His wife would ask what was wrong, and he would just smile and say everything was fine, but it wasn't. His mind was a labyrinth of worries. What if he couldn't support his family next month? What if that decision he made in the past ruined everything? What if people found out he wasn't as strong as he seemed? The days went by, and he kept functioning. But inside, he was crumbling. The excess of thoughts had turned into constant emotional anguish. He could no longer distinguish between healthy reflection and the vicious cycle that trapped him. Each thought led to another. Each worry opened 10 new doors. And he, exhausted, continued trying to solve everything alone. Until one night, sitting there in the darkness, he realized something terrifying. He no longer controlled his thoughts. They controlled him. His mind, which should have been a tool for living, had become a prison where he was the only inmate. When overthinking ceases to be analysis and becomes torment, it's no longer your mind working for you. It's you working for it. And that's a silent slavery that drains even the strongest soul. There's a battle that takes place in silence. It doesn't scream, it doesn't make a scene, it doesn't leave visible marks, but it corrodes from within. It's the struggle between anxiety and faith, that internal war where you try to believe in God while fear whispers that it won't work out. And the hardest part? Many Christians carry this restlessness of the soul without ever talking about it. Because there's an invisible pressure, isn't there? The idea that if you truly trust God, you shouldn't be anxious. If your faith were strong enough, your mind would be at peace. So you keep everything to yourself, smile in meetings, raise your hands in worship. But inside, you're drowning. The truth is, denying anxiety doesn't make it go away. Pretending everything is okay when your Christian emotional health is collapsing isn't faith. It's exhaustion disguised as spirituality. And God never asked you to pretend to be okay. He asked you to be honest. Because anxiety doesn't make you any less of a Christian. It doesn't disqualify you before God. What wears you down is carrying alone something that was never meant to be carried that way. And perhaps you're so tired precisely because you've been fighting against something that God wants you to surrender. So before you think you're weak for feeling this way, remember, even giants of faith faced storms within their own minds. The difference is that they learned where to find rest. Anxiety, according to the Bible, is not a modern theme. It didn't originate with social media, chaotic traffic, or bills to pay. It has always been present in the human experience. And Scripture doesn't ignore this. On the contrary, it speaks directly about the fear and worry that dwell in the human heart. David, a powerful king, wrote in the Psalms about his troubled soul, about sleepless nights, about tears that soaked his bed. Jeremiah wept for the anguish of his people and for his own inner pain. Elijah, after a great spiritual victory, sat under a tree and asked to die, overcome by emotional exhaustion. These men were not weak, they were human, and God did not reject them for feeling the weight of anxiety. Instead, he met them exactly where they were, in their vulnerability, their weariness, their mental confusion, because the Word never promised that we would not have inner struggles. What it did promise was that we would not be alone in them. Before we continue, if you're finding this content relevant, please leave a like below and subscribe to the channel. This helps me understand that this topic is important to you and motivates me to bring you more content like this. Now let's get back to it. The Bible's deepest revelation about the anxious mind isn't a magic formula for eliminating thoughts. It's the assurance that God knows each and every one of them, and yet He doesn't abandon you. Philippians 4:6-7 doesn't say to feel nothing. It says to take everything to God. There's a huge difference in that. So if you thought the Bible condemns your anxiety, take a deep breath. It doesn't condemn it. It embraces it. And it points to someone who understands what's going on inside you better than you do yourself. Jesus observed people, and not with distance or coldness, but with a deep attention to what was going on inside them. He saw the tired faces, the heavy shoulders, the lost gazes of those who carried anxiety, even without speaking about it. And it was precisely to these people that he spoke in Matthew 6, one of the best-known passages, and also one of the most misinterpreted, about worry. Do not be anxious about your life, he begins, and immediately afterward he points to the birds of the air and the lilies of the field. At first glance, it may seem simplistic, but it is not. Jesus wasn't downplaying the real difficulties of life. He knew people needed food, clothing, and shelter. He knew there were concrete challenges. But what he did was expose the root of the problem, the illusion of control. Because ultimately, thinking too much about tomorrow doesn't change tomorrow. It only destroys today. Jesus' teachings on worry were not theoretical. They were practical, visceral, directed at the human heart that he knew so well. He knew that the human mind has a tendency to create catastrophic scenarios that never happen. He knew that worry adds not a single day to anyone's life. And then, with the authority of the one who created both the birds and the lilies, he asked a question that still resonates today. Which of you by worrying can add a single cubit to your height? The answer is obvious. No one. Because anxiety doesn't build, it only consumes. But if Jesus had simply said, "Don't worry," and stopped there, that would have been cruel, wouldn't it? Thankfully, he didn't stop there. He went deeper, and what comes next changes everything. Human logic dictates, control your thoughts, organize your mind, make lists, plan every detail, keep everything under control. And the more we try, the more exhausted we become, because the truth is, we will never be able to control everything. But Jesus didn't command us to control our thoughts. He commanded us to change the focus of our hearts. Seek first the kingdom of God and His righteousness, and all these things will be added to you. Matthew 6:33. Notice, He didn't say that problems would disappear. He didn't promise that you would never have worries. What he did was redirect your attention from what you lack to the one who provides, from your inability to his ability. And that, my friend, is faith against anxiety. It's not ignoring reality. It's trusting that there is someone greater than it. It's not pretending that everything is all right. It's resting in the one who has already solved what you are still trying to solve. The turning point comes when you realize that the solution isn't in thinking better, but in surrendering what you can't carry. Because trusting God isn't the absence of doubt. It's the conscious decision not to let doubt have the last word. Jesus doesn't ask you to be perfect. He asks you to be honest about your weaknesses and then let him be strong where you are weak. That's the logic of the kingdom. And it works in a way that our rational minds will never be able to fully comprehend. But is it really possible to rest when the mind is still agitated? Yes, and that's exactly what we're going to get into now. Rest. For the mind doesn't mean the absence of thoughts. It's not about emptying your head or reaching a state of Zen where nothing affects you. If it were that simple, it would be impossible, because as long as you're alive, your mind will think. That's what it's there for. So, what is true rest? It is the presence of purpose. It is knowing that even when thoughts arise, there is a firm foundation upon which your soul can rest. It is the certainty that you are not adrift, even when it seems that way. Jesus said in Matthew 11:28, "Come to me, all you who are weary and burdened, and I will give you rest." Notice that he didn't say, "Come when you are well." He said, "Come weary, come exhausted, come burdened," because that's precisely where he acts. The rest that Jesus offers doesn't depend on the circumstances being resolved. It depends on who is with you while you go through them. And that companionship changes everything. It changes how you interpret the chaos. It changes the intensity of the burden. It changes the hope you carry, even in the midst of the storm. How can you calm your mind with God? It's not through sophisticated techniques or secret formulas. It's through the simple yet profound practice of presence. It's learning to turn to him, not just when everything collapses, but in the small moments of the day. It's breathing and remembering, he is here, I am not alone. And when you do this repeatedly, something starts to change. It's not that the problems disappear, it's that they cease to have absolute power over you, because you discover that there is a peace that doesn't depend on the world being in order. Philippians 4:7 speaks of a peace that surpasses all understanding. And this expression is fascinating because it implies something that our logic cannot explain. How can you have peace when everything is hopeless? How can the soul find rest when the mind is still agitated? The answer lies in the fact that inner peace in Jesus doesn't come from control, but from surrender. It doesn't come from having all the answers, but from trusting in the one who does. It's a peace that defies logic, because it doesn't depend on external circumstances. It depends on a spiritual reality that transcends the visible. Think about it. How many times have you tried to control everything, and yet the anxiety persisted? How many nights have you spent planning, organizing, trying to anticipate every possible problem, and still couldn't rest? Because control is an illusion. And as long as you try to maintain that illusion, you will live exhausted. But when you surrender, truly surrender, something changes. It's not passivity, it's not giving up, it's recognizing that there are limits to what you can do, and that those limits are not the end of the world. They are the beginning of trust in God. The peace that Jesus offers guards your heart and mind. It guards them. Not because everything is perfect, but because even in imperfection, there is a sustaining presence. And when you discover this, you truly discover it. The way you face life changes completely, but there's a place where many stumble. And if we don't talk about it now, this whole message could get lost. It's about Christian overthinking. and it's more common than you think. There's a specific type of overthinking that brutally affects Christians. It's when even faith becomes a source of guilt and excessive worry. When you start questioning, am I praying enough? Is my faith weak because I'm still afraid? Is God angry with me because I can't stop worrying? And so, Christian overthinking transforms one's own spiritual life into a source of anguish. Instead of faith being a refuge, it becomes yet another place where you feel inadequate. And that's devastating because you were seeking relief precisely where you found the most pressure. But listen carefully. God never asked for emotional perfection as a prerequisite for you to draw closer to Him. Never. He knows you are human. Know that you will fail, doubt, feel fear. And even so, He doesn't give up on you. Because the relationship with Him is not based on your spiritual performance. It's based on grace. When Peter began to sink in the sea, Jesus did not leave him there to dwell on his mistakes. He reached out His hand. When Thomas doubted, Jesus did not reject him. He showed him His wounds. When the disciples slept in Gethsemane while He agonized, Jesus did not abandon them. He returned to them. So if you're stuck in a cycle of fear and worry about your own spirituality, breathe. Stop trying to be perfect. Start being honest, because God prefers your broken honesty to your feigned perfection. And when we finally let go of the burden of trying to be what we are not, we make room for God to be who He has always been, sufficient. So how do you find spiritual peace when your mind is at war? When the world around you is in chaos and inside things aren't much better? The truth is, there's no single formula, but there are paths that lead to the same source. First, stop trying to solve everything alone. Prayer is not a last resort, it's the first. And it doesn't need to be eloquent. It can simply be, God, I can't take it anymore, help me. Because God isn't looking for pretty words. He's looking for honest hearts. Second, learn to identify what is your responsibility to carry and what is not. There are things God expects you to do, and there are things only He can do. Confusing the two leads to exhaustion. Knowing how to distinguish them brings clarity, and clarity calms the mind. Third, surround yourself with truth. Spend time in the Word, not out of religious obligation, but because you find perspective there. Isaiah 26:3 says, "You will keep in perfect peace those whose hearts are steadfast, because they are at peace with you." A steadfast heart doesn't mean a heart without doubts. It means a heart that is anchored. Fourth, live one day at a time. Jesus said not to worry about tomorrow because each day has its own problems. It wasn't pessimism, it was realism, and it was also liberation. Because when you stop trying to control the future, you can live in the present. Learning to calm your mind with God isn't a one-time event. It's a process. It's a daily learning experience of surrendering, trusting, breathing, and starting over. And even when you fail, because you will fail, grace is there, waiting to lift you up again. But there's something we haven't said yet, something that ties everything we've seen so far together. And that's what will change the way you look at your own mind. The mind may continue to think, thoughts may return, anxiety may knock on the door again. But here is the transformative truth: they no longer need to control you, because you have discovered something greater than them. You've discovered that your identity isn't in your thoughts. It's not in your ability to control everything. It's not in always having the right answers. Your identity lies in being a son or daughter of God. And that's something no one, not even your own mind, can take away from you. When you arrive at that place, something profound happens. Overthinking loses its power, not because you've stopped thinking, but because you've learned not to give thoughts more authority than they deserve. You've learned that they are just thoughts. They are not absolute truth. They don't define who you are. And the heart learns to rest. Even when the head is restless, the heart knows where it is anchored. It knows there is a God who does not fail, who does not give up, who does not tire of you, and that certainty, that trust in God, changes everything. Rest for the mind is not a luxury, it's a necessity, and Christian emotional health is not a sign of weakness, it's a sign of wisdom. It's recognizing that you were created to live in peace, not in constant torment, and that this peace is available even now, even here. So if you're tired of overthinking, if your soul is exhausted from carrying the weight alone, listen to this. Jesus is still saying, "Come to me," not when you're ready, not when you're strong, now, just as you are. Because the answer he gave 2,000 years ago still resonates today. I will give you rest, and that promise never fails. If you've made it this far, perhaps it's because something within you resonated with this message. Perhaps you recognize the silent battle of the weary mind. Perhaps you're realizing you're not alone in this struggle, and that's already a huge step. Now, I want you to reflect. What are you going to do with what you've heard? Because information without application changes nothing. The question isn't whether you have too many thoughts. The question is, where will you place your trust when they arrive? If this video touched you, leave a comment below. Tell me, how have you been dealing with anxiety and faith? What have you learned about resting your mind? And if you know someone who is struggling with this in silence, share this video. It might be exactly what that person needs to hear today. Subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications, because we're going to continue exploring topics that matter, topics that touch on real life, with biblical truth and genuine hope. Because your faith journey deserves to be lived with inner peace in Jesus, not with guilt and mental exhaustion. And remember this, overthinking can exhaust you, but there is someone who never tires of carrying you, someone who knows your every thought and still loves you completely, someone who has already conquered the chaos so that you can rest. The answer Jesus gave wasn't about controlling the mind. It was about surrendering the heart. And when you do that, something changes. Not suddenly, not magically, but profoundly. Because finally you discover that the peace you sought wasn't in the silence of your thoughts. It was in the presence of the one who never leaves you. May God bless your journey, and may his rest be real in your life today and always.